Welcome to another season of Our Schools, Our Future. Tonight, we have two Associate Superintendents with us, Dr. Rebecca Maloney and Dr. Raynell Houston, and they are going to give us some information on the Common Core. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
I tell you what, the beginning of the school year has gone very smoothly for our schools.
Yes, it has.
So far.
I'm hearing great things.
Yeah, I think everything is going really well. You know, I really appreciate you all being here today. As you all know, and we've discussed with our principals, the most important thing we do is we spread the faith of our church through the Ministry of Catholic Education. But that's also embedded with extremely strong academics, because we always want to offer our students the very best in everything that we do. So today we're going to talk about the Common Core curriculum and how that is going to be implemented in our schools. And the two of you both have your doctorate in curriculum and instruction. So you all are the ones. You've been going to all of our schools and giving workshops. I've been hearing great things from the workshops. Parents have met with you. And so now we want to really share that information with the entire community. So I would like to just ask a little bit about the history and the background of the Common Core. So I think
Okay.
Raynell?
I'll start. Just a little bit about standards-based education in Louisiana and in the Archdiocese. National standards have been around for a very, very long time. And national standards informed our first set of state standards. In 1997-98, the state published standards and benchmarks, which were very broad statements about what students should know and be able to do at the end of a specific grade level.
And so with standards and benchmarks, basically how would schools utilize standards and benchmarks, just for parents who might not be familiar with standard-based education?
They would use standards and benchmarks as a guideline. You can think of standards as being the end, the expectation of what students should know and be able to do, and curriculum is more of the means by which we get there. So standards guides us kind of like a GPS, if you will, to where we need to get to at the end of that grade level. So 97-98, the state published those. Then in 2004, the state published the grade level expectations, which were more specific in that it gave teachers more direct, more clear expectations for students at the end of their grade level. So the standards and benchmarks were broad and the GLEs were more specific. So teachers were excited about that because it was very clear. Okay, my students should know and be able to do this at the end of this grade level.
Okay, now GLEs, grade level expectations.
Yes. So that is what was going on at the national level and at the state level as far as the Department of Ed. Then in 2000, the Archdiocese embarked on standards-based education, or SBE, and so they brought in national consultants, reviewed national standards, had committees of teachers and principals working together to create standards that were based on national standards. Then in 2004, when the GLEs were adopted, many of our schools began to use the grade level expectations as well to guide their instruction. So for years, we have used the state standards to guide instruction. Now we use those as minimum learning targets. As you said just a few minutes ago, our schools have a rich history of academic excellence and rigor. So our schools use those as minimum targets, and we've always gone above and beyond those.
Well, I think just what we're doing in our schools, it's phenomenal. Now, how will this tie in the standards and the benchmarks with the Common Core? How is that different, and how is that being addressed throughout the United States?
Well, the Common Core state standards differ from our Louisiana grade level expectations in degree of complexity and focus and coherence. So our grade level expectations are kind of like teaching a mile wide and an inch deep. We have so much to cover, we can't go in depth, and we have a lot to do in a short amount of time. Our Common Core state standards are more clear, they're more coherent in that they build from one year to the next in complexity as what we expect from our students, and they are more rigorous and they create more in-depth learning for our students. So we're raising the bar as far as our minimum expectations are for our students.
And you say minimum expectations, so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that our schools will have the opportunity to go beyond what those standards are.
As they have always done. That is that will continue to be the tradition in which we operate. Yes.
Now, this is something that really several states are embarking upon adopting this. Now, in the Archdiocese, we are not going to adopt all the components, and we'll get to that later in the program, but I wanted to ask you, what is the state, what are the states doing throughout the United States, and just what, if you can tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Right now there's 46 states and 3 territories that have decided to use Common Core state standards in their states. And you hear sometimes people call it a curriculum, and I just want to be very clear. One of the questions we've heard from parents is this a national curriculum? And because so many states have adopted it, it seems national. But these standards were developed, they were really developed sort of at the state level. It was the National Governors Association and the Association of State School Superintendents who really spearheaded this. They looked at the old national standards and they said, we've got too many, and they're all over the map, where the standards in Louisiana were lower than the standards in Wisconsin, were higher than the standards somewhere else. So what they did is they sort of said, everybody's going to try to reach these standards. So in a sense, if 46 states have adopted it, you could call it national, but what you can't call the Common Core state standards are a curriculum, because they're not a curriculum. They are a set of standards that outline the knowledge and skills the kids need to know for college and career readiness, which we'll explain as we go along. But they're not everything that goes into teaching it. It's not the textbooks, it's not the videos you use and so forth. Everything that informs your teaching. They are simply targets that you use to put your instruction around, you know, and so people say, where's the books? Where's the list of books that are the Common Core books? It's not like that. It's simply the standards, and that's what we are adapting, that we'll use those standards to inform our teaching.
Yes, as I said before, the standards, you can look at that as the end. That's the end to which we want to be. We want to at least have our students proficient in demonstrating mastery at that level. But the means by which we get there is our curriculum. So my lessons, my activities, my videos, any hands-on application that my students are doing, simulations, demonstrations, any product they're creating, that's my curriculum. So that is everything that I use to teach to those standards. So that will be left up to our schools, as it always has been. Our schools are primarily site-based managed, meaning our leadership teams at our schools are very competent. They know their target audience and their student populations, and they are the ones who should make those decisions about what materials to use to teach their students, and that will continue to happen in the diocese. So there is no approved list of books, there's no approved curriculum, there's no list. You will continue using what you've used. I was talking to a principal today, and he said that his school uses a specific reading program for K-2, and I asked him, is that going to change with Common Core? And he said, of course not. We're just teaching to these standards. So that's an illustration of how Common Core will impact us, but our schools still maintain their local control.
And that's exactly answers the other question we get from parents, that if the public schools are adopting this, what makes us different? If we are adopting what the public schools are doing, does that make us public schools? And in no way does that make us public schools, because our curriculum are Catholic. We come out of our Catholic identity. We teach with Jesus as the center. It has nothing to do with the standards themselves. And I think that's a lot of confusion, that people feel it's a curriculum, that we've adopted somehow this national curriculum and we're going to be doing the same thing as the public schools. That's not the case at all. It's like, as Dr. Houston said, it's up to the schools themselves, the teachers themselves, what materials they use and how they reach these standards. So it does not in any way diminish our Catholic schools at all.
Well, and what we'll do when we return, it's just about time for a break, I would like to talk to you more about some of the misconceptions that we've heard from parents and stakeholders and the concerns, and so we can address those right away. Okay. So we'll be right back after this message. Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Raynell Houston and Dr. Rebecca Maloney discussing the Common Core. You know, as I said before the break, I've heard some real concerns from parents. As you know, we've been getting emails, a lot of questions, and yet our principals are so for this because they see that the data has shown that this is indeed a wonderful set of standards that we should embrace. What I'd like to do during this segment is just talk to you about the questions you've gotten from parents and from the stakeholders. I know you've even met with several people in our office, and just talk about what were those questions, what were the commonalities that you've heard as far as the concerns, and then how did you address those concerns. What has amazed me is once you've met with parents, they say, okay, that's not really what I understood it to be. In the Archdiocese is doing this in a way in which I'm fine with that. Yes. But we want to get that out there to everyone, to let them know what we're doing exactly. So what questions are you hearing, and how are you answering those questions?
Sure. Well, of course, the biggest question is, why are we doing this? Why would we even adopt the Common Core state standards? And I can answer that on many different levels, but one level is we are preparing our students for college and career readiness. They need to pass the ACT with certain scores to get into college, and that's very, very important.
Now, is this aligned with the ACT?
Yes, exactly. The ACT will tell you that they're completely aligned with the Common Core standards, but what's going to happen with the teaching of these standards is questions are going to be asked differently. Questions are going to be multifaceted, and the students are going to have to apply a lot of information, when in the past maybe it was more recall and knowledge-based. So what is going to happen is the ACT and SAT are going to change their method of questioning. So we're going to have to address that by changing our methods of questioning following the Common Core state standards. So one big reason why we're adopting this is to make sure we continue to prepare our students for these tests. And that's a big one. Now, Dr. Houston and I went to some training last summer, and at the break, I went up and asked the presenter, you know, we've got some schools that are doing excellent jobs at preparing these kids, and their ACT scores, their SAT scores are wonderful. And she said, let me address that to everyone. So we came back together, and she said, I want to tell a story. I met with a company that only hires the best and the brightest engineers, that they only graduate from the highest engineering schools. So these are the best of the best. Their ACT scores and SAT scores are the highest. And so I went to the company and said, how are they doing? And they said, well, they're not doing too well. They know the material, but they can't apply it. They can't get in groups and problem solve because they've never been asked to do that on a level that I need them to do it. And that really anchored this for me, that our students, while they may know the material at a very high level, maybe we haven't asked them to apply it, really real-world application, authentic learning. And that's really important in the Common Core state standards, to bring everything to the real world. Why am I learning these math problems? Because I'm going to use them this way. And so I think that's really important for people to understand.
Right. I have never met a parent who said to me that they did not want their child to be a deep thinker or a great problem solver. We are raising the bar, and we are requiring students to use critical and analytical thinking skills at such a level that we've never expected before. So in order to prepare them for success in college and in career, we have to demand these things of them. And the Common Core state standards give us those guidelines and give us that direction so that we can produce children who will be successful on the ACT, SATs, in college and in career.
Definitely.
Let me ask you this. When I talk with parents, and I always refer them to you because this is your area, they express concerns about the Common Core that I really have never even heard as being part of what we're going to implement. It's not part of what we're going to implement. Could you talk about some of that and some of the things that have come up where we've had to clarify any misunderstandings as far as what we're implementing as a family of schools in the Archdiocese of New Orleans?
Sure. One of the biggest things that people mention is data mining. It's something that's been in the media, that the assessments that the kids will be taking across the country, it's going to be gathering information about those students, and they feel that the information will be incorrectly used. However, we are not using any of the assessments that the public schools use. We've never used the assessments that the public schools are using. So we're not even in that. You know, no extra information will be mined from our students. Our students will continue to use the testing programs that they currently use. And they'll continue to take the ACT and SAT, but we do not have any affiliation with the big assessment. There's two big assessment groups that are working, PARC and Smarter Balance, and we do not have an affiliation with them. So we're not giving those assessments to our students, and that's a big concern. And it was really a national story about data mining, and that would never occur with our students.
Now, assessment will change on different levels. In the classroom level, for instance, teachers will do formative assessments and summative assessments. So formative assessments, teachers use that to guide their instruction. So as I am teaching, I am assessing students. So whereas before I'm a first grade teacher, I'm assessing addition, I might give them a worksheet that had 25 addition problems, and they write their answers, and I say either they're right or they're wrong. You got this grade 80%, so you're mastery. You got a 60%, you did not master the material. In that case, I don't know where the breakdown occurred, and I don't know how to help the student to be successful. With the Common Core, the formative assessment will require students to explain their thinking. So instead of giving them a worksheet with 20 problems, I might give them a few word problems that require them to apply the concept of addition, and students have to answer the problem, but they have to explain their thinking to me and show their work so that I can see exactly what it is they understand and what they don't. So wherever the breakdown occurs, I can address that, and I can meet the students where they are to help them to be successful and to demonstrate mastery with this skill. That's one of the biggest shifts that will occur with the implementation of the math standards this year. The summative assessment will be more of a unit assessment. So at the end of that unit on addition within 5 digits in first grade, my students will take an assessment that will require them to not only do the math, which is the skill, but to think deeply and to problem solve and to apply it to everyday real world applications. So it would be a real world problem, a word problem, and they would have to, again, demonstrate, justify, or show their work. So that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest shifts that will take place that parents are asking about.
So, and what I'm hearing you say, just to clarify, is that we are going to look at all the assessments available, and we are not, just I want parents to understand this, that we'll look at all the assessments. We are going to work with the principals to determine what is best for our students as far as the assessments. And the components of the Common Core that we're going to utilize are the standards and the grade level expectations. Now, we may have some commonalities with what the public schools are doing as far as the standards and the grade level expectations, and I think that would be wonderful. But we're going to look at that and make decisions that we think is best for our family of schools with the administrators.
Right, definitely.
And that, because one thing about our schools, I keep referring to it as our family of schools, because we are a family of schools that are site-based managed.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so our principals look at what needs to be done, and they want to use data-driven decisions to offer the best possible curriculum. And the data and research backs it up.
Definitely.
That the Common Core will allow our students to be better prepared for college and for the workplace.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
But we are not going to necessarily embrace every component of the Common Core. That would be up to the schools to do that.
Yeah. Well, we are not in a position to create a formal partnership with those groups. So our use of the standards is simply an informal use. It's our decision to use the standards to inform instruction. The states have kind of the public schools have no option because the state acts on their behalf and has signed a formal partnership or agreement. So they are tied to the PARC assessment. They're tied to this national database that collects student data. They're tied to teacher evaluations. We don't have any of that because we're not in that we're not in a partnership.
And though for the public schools, that could be something that is really good for
Yes.
the public schools
Yes.
in looking at that.
Yes.
Sure.
But we have the opportunity to do as a non-public school or a non-public family of schools is to decide what works for us as a site-based managed
Right.
school. And
Exactly.
what I think is just so wonderful is that the way that the principals have done their homework in looking at this,
Sure.
you know. And we will be back in a moment. It's time for another break. It's going by so fast. We'll be back in just a moment where we'll talk about how the Common Core is going to help prepare our kids for the future.
It's happening in schools and schoolyards. A timeless tradition is rekindled with every new class, in every new face. In Louisiana Catholic schools, learning goes beyond textbooks and testing. Students are embracing faith, values, leadership skills, and of course, a classic history of academic excellence. Invest in success. Louisiana Catholic Schools, a class of their own.
Because play might be the best way to fight obesity.
Because staying connected makes my family stronger.
Because a safe place after school can lead to success in school.
Because physical activity is vital to my health and well-being.
Because I need to make my world better.
Because playing team sports teaches character and social skills.
Because we need each other.
Because we need each other.
Because we need each other.
Welcome back. We've talked about the Common Core and how we are going to adapt it for our schools. We also talked about some of the concerns that the parents have had, and we're going to talk about how this is going to help our schools. But before that, I just want to, for my own benefit, get your opinion or your thoughts on why have some states pulled out? Because that's something else that parents have said to me. Well, you know, this state is pulled out because they've done their research and they don't think it's a good initiative. So, but in my research of it, it seems like it's a wonderful initiative.
Sure.
The National Catholic Educators Association have supported this.
Yes.
Southern Association Advanced Ed has supported this. So why would states pull out of this?
Well, one example, I believe it was Wisconsin, after they examined the Common Core state standards next to their state standards that they were already using, they found that the Common Core state standards were actually lower than their state standards. Well, that's not the case in Louisiana. Our standards were a little bit lower than the Common Core. So in a sense, it's kind of a no-brainer. Why would we not go with a higher standard? I mean, if we're trying to push our students and we're trying to make sure they succeed, not only in college but in their careers, we need to bring them up to that next level. So in Louisiana, it wouldn't really make sense to do that. Where perhaps in Wisconsin, if they found that they were already meeting those standards, that they were already higher than that, then they wouldn't do that. Another thing that people are finding is an implementation dip when they start with those assessments. And sure, that's going to happen when you start teaching a different way or start covering some different material. You're going to find a little bit of an implementation dip.
And you mean by that it's going to get worse before it gets better?
It gets worse before it gets better.
exactly.
So some states have found that also. I believe Kentucky dropped in 34% or something in their scores and their testing. But again, we're not using those the same assessments. So it's kind of hard to say that we would have that sort of problem. But really, I think because the standards are higher than what we're currently doing. So we certainly want to aim for those.
And you know, I think you bring up an excellent point when you talk about the implementation dip. It's a new way of thinking. And what I would not want us to do is to say, you know, panic if we see kids at what we perceive not doing as well on the testing, because it's going to be a different way of questioning.
Yes.
And as we know, when it's something new, it takes a little while to get used to that and to embrace it. But let me ask you, why do you think that this is the right decision for our schools?
I think our kids are going to be better prepared. I think they're going to be more productive citizens. I think they're going to be better problem solvers and better thinkers, and they will be able to apply what they've learned in new situations. I think we're giving them the tools to be successful in the 21st century. We cannot use an old model to prepare kids for the future. So I think we have to adapt, we have to evolve in order to make our kids the best that they can be. So I think we're doing the right thing by implementing these standards.
And several of our schools, St. Mary's Academy, SSA, Mount Carmel, to name only a few, have already embraced several components of the Common Core curriculum.
Yes, I think one misconception is that all of this is new, and it's not. A lot of it is just good teaching, the tenets of good teaching. So the critical thinking, the application, those are things that we should have been striving for from the very beginning. In our schools, many of them have been doing that, so they will continue with that tradition. But it's not all new. A lot of it is, a lot of the tenets are things that we have been taught in colleges of education for years that we should be implementing, and our schools have done a great job of doing that.
Definitely. And one thing to add to that, this is the information age. The information is out there. It doesn't all exist in a textbook. You know, a solid textbook is very static. So we have some teachers who will tell parents, we're not going to use a textbook in this class, and that's a big concern to the parents. But what the teachers are really saying is, we're going to get our resources from various places. And we're talking to the teachers to make sure that the parents know where those places are so that the parents can use those resources. Because if we just continually stick to these static textbooks, we're not preparing these kids in the way they need to. They need to be consumers of information, and we need to know they need to know how to get to that information, how to evaluate it, and how to apply it to what they're learning. So it's not always going to be off a handout or out of a textbook. And that's concerning to some parents because they're so used to studying with their kids through a textbook, which is wonderful. But there are going to be different ways to study now. Maybe it's watching a videotape. Maybe it's
or a webinar.
A webinar,
like that.
sure. Drawing a picture, creating a presentation. It's going to be very different in that respect. And change can be a little bit scary.
More, it seems like, with the child actually participating in the process, such as you said, making some type of film on a project rather than just doing a book report. And I also want to say, from talking to the principals and talking to the two of you, if schools don't necessarily use the textbook, they're still teaching the concepts that are in that textbook. They're still using that curriculum. They're just trying to find more creative ways to keep each child interested, as well as meet each child where he or she is on their grade level to help them grow and be the best that they can possibly be. It's almost time for us to go. It's going by so fast. But before we leave, let me ask you, after listening to this, we can go online. We're going to have a letter from NCEA on there. SACS, like I said, SACS has also embraced the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. Parents still has doubts. Still concerned, not sure they want to go with this, still has questions. How can they get in touch with you all?
Well, first I would refer them to our website. The Office of Catholic Schools has a website. We have a Common Core link with information for parents. There are interviews, there are articles, there are websites that offer information. And then if they have more questions after viewing all of that information, they can contact us at the Office of Catholic Schools.
Please give us a call. We'd be happy to meet with them.
Yes.
Oh, that would be great. And you know, you all have met with so many people. You've gone to parent meetings. So also our schools can invite you to parent meetings, school board meetings. We love to be in the schools. But the most important thing from all of this is just that we are constantly striving to do the very best that we can for our students so that we can maintain that academic excellence, which we've done for years.
Rooted in the Catholic faith.
Rooted in the Catholic faith.
Taught through the Catholic worldview.
Well, I just really appreciate both of you being here. Like I said, as you all go around to the schools, I'm hearing wonderful things. And I also invite any of you who still have some questions or comments or concerns to please call our office. You can always reach us, and please feel free to contact us anytime. I want to thank you so much for being here today. I also want to thank WLAE for giving us this opportunity to share the good news about Catholic education.